Hello and welcome to the Gallimaufric Science Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Raven Amos. Sometimes I do funny voices. Sometimes I leave that up to my other co-hosts. So say hello to Zachary Miller.
Hello, hello.
And then we've got Tommy Leung.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
And we've got Scott Elyard joining me here in Wasilla.
Hiya.
If you want to know a little bit more about us, who we are, what we do, tune into the first episode of Gallimaufric Science Podcast, and you'll get kind of a butcher's look at what we're about.
Or something to that effect, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we were discussing beforehand, before we started recording, about the papers we're going to talk about this week and having a round table discussion here, brief discussion about what we have watched or read this week, not science related. Who wants to begin? Should it be me? Should it be Scott? Should it be one of you? What would you like?
Not me.
Okay, so not Zach.
Not Zach. All right, I will go ahead and just leap into it because I have watched something over the past month that I'm actually kind of excited about. It's a little property. You may not have heard of it. It's called Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous.
Oh God, I watched this too.
So I might have a different opinion than Zach here, but I sat down. I was kind of forced to watch it, quote unquote. Like I said last time, one of my favorite pastimes to do with my mom is we watch TV and make fun of what's on the screen. That's probably why I like Mystery Science Theater 3000 a lot. One of the things, she's like, okay, well, let's just sit down and, just kind of turn our brains off. And okay, fine. So she fired up the Netflix and we fired up Camp Cretaceous, not knowing what it was. And, it did okay. I think it did okay. It follows the 3-episode rule of anime in that you kind of got to watch 3 episodes before you get hooked. But apart from that, it's got some uneven pacing, some stodgy writing. But then again, it's a kid's show, so what do you do? And I don't know, is it a spoiler to say that people get eaten by dinosaurs in this? Because there are a lot of people getting eaten by dinosaurs.
Surprising amount of people getting eaten by dinosaurs.
What Jurassic franchise where people get eaten by dinosaur? What a plot twist.
What a twist. Yes, indeed. So I found it to be kind of humorous in some spots. I have a nephew about the age that this is kind of geared towards. So I do tend to watch these kind of things a little bit more openly just because I'm, kind of getting some information from my young nephew, Gabe, trying to gauge if this is something he's going to be into. And I deem it so. Yes, he will probably really like this.
Nice.
And of course, we have to talk about Bumpy because it's Bumpy.
Bumpy is cute. I liked Bumpy.
He's probably the best thing about this show.
I'm guessing from the name and the way you guys are talking about it that this is a baby dinosaur.
It is a baby ankylosaur that the kids that are on this tour got to watch hatch. So I guess I should talk a little bit about the plot. I'll try not to give too much away here, but I had a hard time telling at first that this was actually supposed to be taking place during the events of the original, or I say original, but the first Jurassic World movie.
Right.
First Jurassic World movie there. And for some reason, it took me a while to get that. I think I was in the episode where Indominus Rex makes I almost said Indominus Mex. Shades of Gary Larson there. Indominus, yes, Indominus Rex makes an appearance, and then the helicopter thing happens, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is the time frame. Okay, now I'm on board, and now I'm really into it.
Oh, nice.
Because I did kind of like seeing from a different angle all the shenanigans and the destruction happening. That was kind of interesting. Seeing it from that angle and from that perspective, from not from the adult side of things, but from these poor kids that get I'm not going to go into it. Sorry, I don't want to give away the farm there.
I think it's safe to do so because podcasts can have kind of a long lead time. So
I suppose
people probably watched it already, although I have not seen it. So I this is all news to me. So by all means.
Okay.
You can consider it a kind of a spoiler cast. I have no intention of watching this, so just tell me anyway.
Okay, so end of the first season, they finally make it to the boat launch where they're supposed to be, and they've been abandoned. Everybody is gone, and they are left the fuck alone on this island. These kids are left by themselves to fend for themselves, kind of like that one kid in Jurassic Park 3. where Alan, that one, with the
Yeah.
Spinosaurus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, only with more kids, and not all of them get along. So the group dynamics are kind of interesting. There is some good character development that happens. There's some changes that happen to the characters throughout the series. So
That is true.
it's got that going for it. So, apart from stodgy writing, which, you can expect, it's a kid's show, the animation, I guess, is not that great either. But it tells the story. And I'm pretty sure this was just seen as a one-off thing where it was okay, we're just going to do a cash grab. And it was one of those accidentally well-received shows, kind of like Kemono Friends, a show that me and Tommy really like as well.
But Kemono Friends was actually really well written, even though it was written as a cash grab. I think it was the mobile game that it was based on. It actually closed a few months before the anime premiere, so it was on its dying leg. Somehow the show had such spectacular success that it pretty much reignited the franchise that was dying. And,
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately, for season 2, they fired the director, the director that made the show so special. So I didn't watch season. Well, actually, I did watch some of season 2, and the magic just wasn't there comparing with season 1. So Kemono Friends season 1, only Kemono Friends season 1 exists in my mind. Kemono Friends season 2 does not exist.
Right.
It's not canon.
It is not canon. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was kind of a one of those cynical crash grabs too, but it turned out to be actually kind of enjoyable, and I think I like it. I know, I know I like this a lot better than I like any of the movies, to be honest.
Nice.
Fair enough.
You know what? I'm going to agree with that.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it eventually, probably.
It tends to make fun of itself and of the franchise itself. It's like Steven Spielberg came back on as executive producer for one. I think that makes it better than anything that came. Yeah, so it's actually produced by him, and that's why it's decent. Not great, but it's decent.
Did any of you guys see the Jurassic Park parody thing for Animaniacs?
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
we
Lovely.
did. That was enjoyable.
I forced Scott to sit down with me and watch it. What was it, yesterday or day before?
Well, I was standing, and you didn't force me because you're sitting down, and I could have gotten up and I could have walked away at any time, but I chose to stay and watch. It wasn't being
No,
forced.
I'll hug your legs. No, you're gonna stay here and watch this. Yes.
No, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it very much.
Yes, I can't wait. They're bringing back Pinky and the Brain.
Right. My take on Jurassic World is it was better than I thought it would be. I did watch the whole thing, but I kind of watched the whole thing in the background while I attempted to draw stuff. So I was only half paying attention. I will say I like that there's a Carnotaurus is the main villain because that's my favorite dinosaur. But I will ask the animators here why it's become so rare that anybody animates. This is a computer animation problem, I feel. Animates multi-ton animals having no weight at all while they run.
Oh,
They're just skipping across the land like it's water.
yeah, I think that's a consequence of having to get things churned out very, very quickly. I think Netflix has an incoming reputation for producing things very, very cheaply, or more cheaply than they ought to be produced anyway. And if you want things like weight and all that sort of stuff, you kind of have to iterate an animation sequence to get that sort of stuff in there. It's not something it's always easy to just convey instantly. You got to get it's kind of hard to remember this sort of stuff now, but basically the process is you got an animatic to work from that gives you the amount of time for the shot, and then you got to get the walk cycle in. And the feeling I'm getting from watching a lot of other projects that Netflix has done animation wise is that once the walk cycles and the dialogue are in, they move on to the next shot. Yeah.
That's certainly how it felt with Watership Down.
If you want to talk to fans who are disappointed by computer animation of the source material, just talk to Berserk fans about the new anime. Just look up the Berserk anime, not the old one, the newer one with the computer animation. They are spectacularly bad.
Yeah.
Oh wow, really? Huh.
Oh,
I
yeah.
do
Yeah.
want to add full disclosure. Both Scott and I have a background in animation. That might not have been something I mentioned in the first episode. I
True.
don't think I mentioned that in the first one.
Yeah.
I went to the Art Institute of Seattle, and Scott did computer animation for engineering firms.
Different engineering firms, but didn't really involve a whole lot of the way of. I didn't have to do too many walk cycles or anything like that. I was mostly concerned about this is a flyover of a bridge, you know.
Right.
Well, you have to make a walk cycle for a bridge. I mean,
Right. Yeah, the bridge has got to
Yep.
walk, man.
Yeah, the bridge has got to go from point A to point B, right? I mean, that's
Hey,
how
we
it
both
works.
we both lived in Washington State. We know what galloping gertie's all about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That bridge is scary.
But yeah, I mean, if you can spend the time necessary for computer animation, you can make it look really good. Give it a lot of weight, give it a lot of pathos, give it a lot of, everything that a good animation needs. And that's what they tend to do in places like Pixar or even like DreamWorks, I think, where they are spending the kind of time and money to make it not look like it was churned out for Netflix, basically.
Yeah, this is just like for any kind of animation. It's just a matter of like resource and time available.
Right.
That's why you have such, I guess, inconsistency across every season of anime. There's like spectacular show all the way up to shows where it looks more like a PowerPoint presentation, to be honest.
oh god,
Right.
Yeah, I think I've seen some animations that basically resemble that. So yeah.
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 I have done some stop motion animation, so I have done walk cycles and stuff like that. But even that's just like you can iterate a stop motion animation in the process is slightly different, but the idea is basically the same. You're basically investing time, energy, and effort and getting it to look right. And if it doesn't
Yeah.
look like the first take, do it again.
there you go.
Which of course means more time. So, but yeah, the Watership Down animation was another example of sometimes they got it to look right, and sometimes they didn't. So
Yeah, there you go.
did we talk about Watership Down last episode? I can't remember.
I don't think we
don't
did.
No,
think
we
so.
did
We
not.
didn't talk about any anime or cartoon last episode. So.
We didn't talk about shows at all. No.
Well, I guess that's what I'll be bringing up to the table then.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Go
Do you
ahead.
guys want me to go next, or do you want Zach to go next, or
No, go next.
Tommy?
Yeah, nah, that much info?
Okay, all right, I'll go next. Basically, one of the things I've been reading was The Misenchanted Sword by Lawrence Watt Evans. I've been kind of going back through and picking up fantasy from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and somewhat of the 90s that I missed completely first time around. I thought it was a fairly decent outing. I mean, kind of uneven writing occasionally, but I enjoyed it very much, actually, as it turns out. So it was published in 1985. And the author is Lawrence Watt Evans, who was unknown to me before reading this book. So, and the concept is basically you've got two states that are at war with one another for centuries, is what I gathered. And this one scout finds himself cut off by the enemy and runs into this old magic-using hermit in these marshes. And in order to help him get away, the magic user chants his sword. The sword will become very effective once it's drawn from its scabbard. But once it's drawn from the scabbard, he's got to kill somebody with it. After that, the sword doesn't care. But it's more complicated than that. By the time he gets the sword back to his side's home camp, they run a lot of tests on it, and they determined, well, here's what you're looking at. You can kill exactly 100 people. After that, you're going to die on the sword. It will be your death.
Ooh, interesting.
Such so that so long as you don't die on the sword, you may remain alive indefinitely.
Oh,
You may continue to age, but you will remain alive. So
that's interesting.
yeah. The other gotcha about the sword was once it has been drawn from the scabbard, it cannot be put back into the scabbard until it has killed someone.
Yeah, not just drawn blood.
Not drawn blood. Killed somebody. After the sword's owner, the character named Valder, kills his last person with the sword and dies upon it, the next owner of the sword must then kill 99 people and then be killed upon the sword.
Oh, I see.
And so forth and so on, 98, 97 for each subsequent owner. The consequences of the book are actually kind of entertaining because his possession of the sword throughout the course of a normal lifetime outlasts this multi-century war. the war ends before he gets a chance to use up all 100 slots of the sword.
Oh, wow.
Once the war is over, he's kind of at a loss as what to do, because at first they want to make him an assassin, which eats up into the slots. And he starts to get a little nervous towards the end of the slots, where you're starting to hit 80 people dead. And you want to start thinking about, well, what am I going to do after I muster out or whatever?
Yeah.
The end of the war pretty much solves the problem for him, and he doesn't have to address that. One other aspect of the spell of ownership that was laid on the sword is he can't be apart from it.
Oh.
Somebody tries to steal it. If
Okay.
he leaves it behind, it will come back to him one way or another, either by somebody carrying it up to it and saying, "Sir, you forgot this," or there will be a small earthquake or a land tidal wave that brings it back. So he can't just throw it in a river and then run away from the problem.
Yeah.
He is stuck with this. The conclusion was kind of leading towards something rather depressing, but I kind of like the way it ended overall. And I'm not going to spoil the ending. Well, I don't know. Somebody out there might want to read this book.
Yeah.
Conclusion is kind of satisfying because the author lays in these sorts of things that you can do with curses and stuff like that. And it's like, well, if somebody's been cursed to smell terrible to everyone around him, what a magic user can then do in saying, well, we can't undo the curse. However, what we can do is dampen the smell of anyone within a 30-yard radius of you.
Oh, there you go.
It won't work on animals, but, you're still going to smell bad, but most people won't notice and therefore won't mind.
Yeah.
The character of Volder remains entangled with the sword permanently. Basically, he is gifted immortality, but not eternal youth. And towards the end, he's like looking for ways to use up his last slots by becoming a headsman, participating in executions, or becoming a very elderly vigilante. And at one point, he actually winds up saving the life of a female magic user in the streets of one of the cities states. It turns out she's several centuries old and has a solution to his problem. The Misenchanted Sword by Lawrence Evans is one of the things I've been reading. But one of the things I've been watching also was the Netflix version of Watership Down, which is one of my favorite novels, for better or for worse. It was one of those things that I got into when I was like 12. It is animated. It's got some great voice casting.
Yep.
General Woundwort was really inspired, for...
Yeah, it's Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley, yeah. Yeah, Ben Kingsley is an outstanding voice for General Woundwort. But the animation is one of the big things that holds it back, really. Because we got scenes that are like, that's not bad. That's pretty good. Got some good weight to the rabbits and the wabbits, the wabbits. The rabbits that have the weight. The wabbits.
The wabbits that have the weight.
We wabbits.
Tell me about the wabbits, George. Those pesky wabbits. Afrifa is really well realized. And it's somewhat more elaborate than what my imagination supplied when I was reading the novel. But Afrifa turned out to look really, really well. I mean, it looks like a totalitarian state.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Oh, yeah. Right down to the rails that go nowhere and the tower. But yeah, like I said, the animation is one of the things that definitely holds it back because there's times when it just barely looks like they got that shot out in time.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a problem for Netflix per se. If they're going to continue doing shows like this, they really need to start giving animators, animation projects specifically, a better budget.
Yeah.
They did really well, I thought, with like the Dark Crystal,
Oh,
Age of
yeah,
Resistance.
which they quickly canceled.
Wow, I had no idea they canceled it. Well, that's
Yeah, I thought we were going to have another series.
Yeah, no, they got a bunch of Emmys, and then Netflix says, no, we'll cancel this.
I'm guessing they probably didn't make enough of a profit on comparing with how much they invested into it.
They didn't get enough new subscribers.
So that's usually that's like the usual story with you can join the rest of anime viewer pining for a season 2 of an IP that will never have a season 2 for whatever reason.
Well, certainly Watership Down and Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous makes me so apprehensive about the upcoming Bone adaptation.
A little
Oh,
bit.
yeah. Brilliant source material, but how are they going to handle it is the great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Netflix still have a lot of very good anime, which they didn't make themselves. They just license it and hang on to it in so-called Netflix jail while the simulcast season rolls on.
Right.
Did any of you watch those Godzilla animes on Netflix?
No,
I
I
have
wanted
not.
to. I really wanted to, but I
Awful.
didn't get a chance.
Just terrible.
Oh, Oh, I'm so sad to hear that.
They barely involve. I mean, they all involve Godzilla, but Godzilla is not the point.
Oh no. So more like the 2014 movie.
I guess my favorite iteration of Godzilla in recent years is still Shin Godzilla.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Keanu did that. It's yeah, that one's really, really good. And it's very much in the spirit of like Godzilla, what Godzilla is supposed to be about, I guess you could say.
Yep.
I like it. I enjoyed it much.
The Netflix movies are kind of like, here's a bunch of anime sci-fi nonsense that's kind of poorly thought out, and then there's also this big monster over here.
Huh.
Yeah.
Hang on, is this the one where they had I haven't watched it, but I've heard people talking about it. Is it where like humans have to leave space and they come back to try to retake it from Godzilla or something like that?
Right. So they go off. Godzilla has destroyed the planet somehow, and humanity is forced to go to another planet, but they take a wrong turn or something and come back to Earth. It's been 10,000 years or some crap because of gravity or something. And, light speed travel. And Godzilla's like the only living thing left. And I mean, there's like 3 or 4 different races in this giant ship, and they're all doing politicking, and characters are trying to take back the planet from Godzilla. And it's just, oh my God. Maybe watch the first one. Watch the first one. I'll put it that way. If you like Godzilla, watch the first one and then decide if you want to keep up with this or not. Because there's 3 of them.
That's my usual approach with anime anyway. It's like watch the first episode and also watch the first 3 episodes. And if I'm still hooked on it, then I'll keep going. Otherwise, I'll just drop it like a hot sack of crap.
Yeah, I've watched the first 2 because the second one was supposed to have Mechagodzilla in it, but it really doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Huh.
This is bait and switch.
It's a tease.
It is. So there you go.
Well, speaking of anime, the few weeks ago was the premiere of the fall 2020 anime season. So I've been checking out a whole bunch of new shows simply because new shows are coming out. So this season, there's like about 39 or 40 full-length shows airing this particular season. That's a lot more comparing with like last season, which was about 26 different shows. This is actually down a bit from usually like 4 season is when they have a lot of shows on, when all the studios put on like the big spectacular shows. This year is a little bit less because of, pandemic and everything. And there's a lot of stuff that got pushed forward to now because of delays associated with pandemic. And usually what I do is that I'll check out like, 6 or 7 shows that look kind of interesting, check them out and see whether they're worth watching, alongside with any other show that were like highly anticipated. I know, I'm definitely going to watch this. So one of those shows, and I've been showing Ravens a few clips of this, and I think Raven know what's coming.
Yes, I do. I do.
It's season 3 of Golden Kamuy. And if you haven't been watching Golden Kamuy, you gotta watch the show. Like you don't have to wait week to week the way that I do. So if you haven't caught up, go and catch up because this show is so much fun. I've heard it being described as a spaghetti western set in Hokkaido, Japan. And in its setup, it's kind of like the good, bad, and ugly. There's all these different characters. Some of them are killers, some of them are scoundrels, I guess you could call them. And they're all after the stash of gold. The main character in this show is this guy called Sachi Sugimoto, who's a former soldier and a veteran of the Russo-Japan War of 1904 and 1905. So the setting is around about turn of the century. And he heard rumors about this secret stash of gold that is somewhere in Hokkaido. And he's seeking out the gold for the blind wife of a dead friend of his from the war. So along the way, he encountered this girl called Ashipura, this young Ainu girl. And Ainu, for people who don't know, the Ainu are the native indigenous people of Japan. So she wants to go after the gold as well because, according to her, her father was killed by a bunch of hunters who were looking for this stash of gold. So they teamed up to go after this gold. And the thing that complicates matters is that there's a rumor of a treasure map to where this gold is, except that different parts of the map has been kind of tattooed jigsaw puzzle style onto the bodies of a bunch of escaped ex-cons. So these prisoners that escaped from this particular prison, most of them have like this tattoo on them, which have like basically parts of the map. So basically, if you get all the tattoos together, they'll form the entire treasure map. And depending on what kind of person you are, you will either find a person and convince them to allow you to copy their tattoo, or you would kill them and basically skin them to get part of this gruesome treasure map. So along the way, they encounter this guy called Shirashi, who's a bit of a scumbag, but he's like a master escape artist. And he's one of the people who have the tattoo on him. After kind of a bit of a fight, Sugimoto convinced him to kind of enter a bit of a truce. And in return, they won't kill him, but like would copy the tattoo of his body. And along the way, they encounter all these other like people, like some of them are total psychos and serial killers and weirdos who all are after the goal. One of them was like a former general. Like this guy, he had the front of his head blown off in the war, and now he's got a metal plate covering the front of his head. And he's like got himself this entire cult of like soldiers who worship him and completely love him, and he's after the gold as well. So they encounter these like people and they enter into like an easy alliance, and there's backstabbing. It's very like spaghetti western, the good, the bad, and the ugly style story.
Nice.
And you know, or like the characters in the show are spectacular. Like they're so full personality. You got all these like serial killers who are like real weird, or even people who aren't serial killers, they're also weirdos as well. Like they, you know, one of the characters that come up was this guy who makes clothing out of human skin. He doesn't kill anyone, but he
Okay.
goes like digging up graves and like making clothing out of them.
That's creepy.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah. So yeah, Raven know who I'm talking about. So this guy, you know how when you wear a leather jacket, it's not like as if you could tell immediately, oh, this came from a cow. You know, it's just an ordinary jacket. But this guy makes like suits that have like human faces or fingers and shit like that all over him.
Cool.
This show is like really crazy. So it's like, and somehow this show is also absolutely hilarious as well. It is got like fantastic characters and drama and action. Also love like food because they're out in the wilds of Hokkaido, so they're hunting various wild animals and cooking them up and stuff like that. And so there'll be moments where this show turns from this like action violent anime into this like food anime. You go, oh, yummy food, and then yummy violence.
Oh my.
And it's also extremely funny. And also you learn about the Ainu culture along the way as well, because that's one of the main aim of the mangaka, the person who created the original manga. That was one of his goals, to basically showcase and teach people about Ainu culture. So he does this research really, really well. And this is a critically acclaimed manga. You know, it's won the Manga Taisho 2016 prize. He won the Tezuka Osamu Cultural Prize in 2018. And some of the panels from this particular manga series that the anime is based on was actually used to promote a British Museum manga exhibit that was held in the British Museum in May to August 2019. So this is really good. If you're not watching the show, you're totally missing out on like a lot of stuff. Also very homoerotic as well.
Yeah, there's
Oh yeah.
This show is like so, it is so much fun. If you're not watching Golden Kamuy, you're missing out on so much. Like the first episode, there was like, speaking of bad computer animation, there was a CGI bear that like people were kind of making fun of for a while. But if you didn't fall off the train, then like just get over that first episode and that bear, because what would come in the subsequent episode would just make you forget all of that. It's just like, oh my god, this show is so amazing. It ends every episode on a cliffhanger, and there's always spectacular stuff going on, ranging from like a bunch of dudes fight a Wolverine to a guy
Yeah.
who wants to get killed by Sugimoto and he get yeet into the air by killer whale.
Yeeted into the air by a killer whale. I haven't seen that clip.
This show is so amazing. 20 minutes would fly by just by like watching that show. And like I said, all the characters are like, even the people who are like psycho killers are really they got really charming personality. So if you're like, oh, no more Hannibal, no more charming serial killers for me to watch on TV, watch Golden Kamuy. It's a spectacular show. So this is like, that was the show that I went into the season going, yes, I'm definitely watching this. There were a couple of other things that I also picked up that based on what I've heard about and what people have been talking. And one of them is a show called Akudama Drive. And it's, I don't know how I'm supposed to describe Akudama Drive. It's this kind of very stylish and stylized neon cyberpunk dystopia high story. That's kind of the best way to talk about it.
Okay.
It's for people listening who might know this, it's very reminiscent of Danganronpa, at least in terms of character design. And it's, I would say that it's a banquet for the eyes. Like there's 2 episodes so far. I picked this up a few days ago and I don't entirely know what's going on. I just know it's so much fun when I'm watching this. It's like the studio just swing its big brass animation balls in front of your face, go, check this out.
Oh,
and you go,
jeez.
yes. So the visual elements is very like Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell / Fifth Element looking kind of a thing. Lots of neon. Which, by the way, Fifth Element is an extremely anime movie, if you were to use anime as an adjective.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's also slightly reminiscent of this other show that aired a few years ago called Blood Blockade Battlefront. It reminds me a little bit of that, but a lot more neon, a lot more cyberpunk, and a lot more like way over the top. It's almost kind of like, in a way, it makes me think of a video game because the Akudama in the title refers to these bunch of like over-the-top criminals, and they all, you can imagine them as like different character classes in a role-playing game. One of them's a hacker, one of them's a brawler. There's another one who is like a surgeon assassin. There's another guy who he's a courier and he rides around on this like, really over-the-top neon electric motorcycle that has a laser cannon on it.
So it sounds like anime Shadowrun, basically.
It kind of is. And like the main character is this girl who is like honest to a fault. And she get caught up in this. Like she was just a seemingly ordinary girl who got caught up in this. And because she doesn't have any criminal record, all the other like Akudama, there's famous S-rank criminals thinks like, oh my gosh, she's such a crazy mastermind. She's wiped her own record. And she's like, no, I'm just like an ordinary girl who doesn't know any of this. So she got caught up in all this. But like at this point, the plot and story is almost inconsequential. There seems to be some kind of overarching plot because at this point, I don't really care because it just looks so good. There's this one part where in the most recent episode, the cast ended up on this airship, this rocket-propelled airship that they smashed into this air quote 7-star hotel, which is this spectacular building. And then they proceed to like hang out and lounge around in this bar, which has like the walls are all kind of like marine creature, aquarium kind of visual display thing going. And then a pair of so-called executioners who are people dressed in like kind of foreign military regalias. They've come to like execute them and they are wielding like lightsabers. So in this like explosion, this debris kind of smash one of the light switch and turn it into like mood lighting. And there's like holographic fish swimming around on the walls while they fight. And then the show has the ball for like one of the characters after the fight is over to go, ugh, this gaudy lighting. This show has so much balls and style that at this point I don't really care so much about the story as much as like, oh yeah, let's watch Akadama Drive, because like almost every frame of the show, you can take a screenshot and use it as a wallpaper for your computer. You know, if you love that Blade Runner ass looking, you know, neon landscape and stuff, the show is like full of that. It's got so much style. All the characters, when they get introduced in these like comic book panels. It's very, very stylized, very, very cool. It's like the show's just standing around the corner going, yeah, I'm fucking cool, man. You know, you're gonna hang with this.
Too cool for school.
Basically, yeah, Akadama Drive, too cool for school. So there's another show I checked out, which is also visually gorgeous, but in a very different way. It's Wandering Witch Journey of Elena. And it's gorgeous more in the kind of like, you know, think of like Studio Ghibli or Ancient Magus Bride, kind of grounded fantasy landscape, just like really gorgeous landscape. Very kiki delivery service, if you kind of think back to that. This is just a show about this girl who became a witch, and it's kind of like a travel log. So it's an episodic travel log where she goes to different places, encounter people, and every single encounter is like a little story. It's almost kind of like an Aesop's fable in a way, about like the things that she encountered and the people that she encountered. Kind of viewer's discretion. In episode 3, some of the story took a bit of a dark turn that I see have been kind of divisive among people. But if you could kind of, you know, so viewer's discretion is advised. The first 2 episodes really gorgeous. 3rd episode still really, really gorgeous, but story took a dark turn. So viewer's discretion advised, but also very, very gorgeous show, but in a very different way. This is based on a light novel, and the light novel is available in English via Yen Press. And the final show that I kind of want to talk about is this other show, which is very funny and very cute, called Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle. And it's based on a manga series that is currently being published in English by Viz Media. The setup of this is very kind of cliche fantasy, where princess get kidnapped by the demon lord, and she's being held captive as a hostage in the demon lord's castle. Except that she's treated really, really well. She gets like this jail cell, which is quite large and quite nice looking. It's like the size of my lounge room. So she got like shelves and bedding, and it's almost like a hotel room. And she's got like an open window that she can escape out of whenever she wants. So security is kind of lax there, and she get free meals a day, and the guards are all really nice to her. So for her, she is like, oh wait, back at my home castle, I have to do all these like royal administrative duties and stuff like that. But here, I just get to like sit around and enjoy myself. So from her perspective, it's like kind of like a vacation. And so the one thing that she wants that is missing is that she wants a good night's sleep, because she doesn't like the pillows and the bedding and stuff like that. And she is a sleep gremlin. She would go out of her way to do whatever it takes to get like material in order for her to have a good night's sleep. And so very early, like in the first episode, she managed to find a way to bribe her guards, which by the way are a pair of teddy bears, to bribe her guards into giving her the keys. And so she could do this repeatedly. So she basically just get free reign to like wander around the castle doing whatever she wants. And at some point she managed to get herself a pair of giant scissors, and were chopping up like the bodies of ghosts to make like nice blankets.
What?
And just she like the animation, it's all very, very cute. So there's like cartoony violence. There's violence, but it's all very cartoony violence. And you quickly realize that it's not so much that the princess is trapped in a castle full of demons, so much as the demons are trapped in the castle with the princess. And she's just wreaking havoc everywhere. And they're like too nice to actually like do anything bad to her. It's always her just going around, just causing a spectacle and causing havoc in her wake to try to get a good night's sleep. This is being animated by the Studio Dogakobo, and the director is Mitsu Yamazaki, who also directed a series called Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, which I insist is one of the funniest anime series I've ever watched, which is also based on a manga series. Monthly Girl Nozaki-kun is usually like most anime comedy. It's mostly when I see something that funny that happens, it's like, that's funny. Monthly Girl Nozaki-kun actually made me laugh. Much like Nichijou. And this show, this Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, it did actually make me physically laugh as opposed to just going, that is funny. So yeah, this show is really, really good. Also, love the demons are actually animal people. So like if any of our listeners are people who are furries or have furry tendencies, so to speak, you can tune in for that show. And like I said, the manga is published by Viz Media if you want to read the manga instead of watching the anime. But anime is available, might as well watch it, right? So those are kind of my picks for the season. So Golden Kamuy, Akadama Drive, Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, and Wandering Witch. I also watched like about half a dozen shows, but I'm not going to go into that because there isn't really all that much to talk about it. But those are my 4 picks of the season.
Nice.
Those are the ones that stood out to you the most.
Yeah, pretty much. I've watched like a bunch of other things too. I've talked about it with like Raven and Scott, but yeah, without making the entire podcast just Tommy's seasonal anime podcast, which could very well become. I won't go into that, so I won't take up too much time just talking about anime. There's people who are like tuning in going, oh yeah, last episode you offered some, really insightful scientific commentary. Let's tune into this episode. I was just like, oh, all
That's
right,
okay.
now 15 minutes of Tommy talking about Japanese cartoons.
Yes.
Well, speaking of the science stuff that we've gone over in the past, do we want to go ahead and just start talking about what we've been reading?
Oh, yes.
Who wants to go first?
I want to hear about these short-necked plesiosaurs.
Well, I'm going to take a break from talking for a little bit, so I'll let you guys
Okay,
go
sure.
first.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically, I got into something fairly dense for me, I will say. The macroevolutionary landscape of short-necked plesiosaurians, which was published in Nature Research Scientific Reports by Valentin Fischer et al. Link in the show notes below, of course. And basically, what the researchers for this paper did was they 3D scanned a number of skulls, approximately 40, I want to say, short-necked plesiosaurs. The 2 major groups that were discussed were Thalassophonia and
Okay.
Polycalidids. And I'm not going to go into the individual pronunciations of a lot of these animals because that will make the podcast overly long because I have to edit it together.
Oh.
I will say this, I'm just going to admit it right out front. This is way over my head. This is, as they say, way over my pay grade as far as the process is concerned. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the discussion. I mean, there's some great facts in this paper, don't get me wrong. Amniotes have undergone at least 69 independent evolutionary transitions onto the land. That's like the first sentence. They talk about basically 2 groups that have convergently evolved approaches to this evolutionary landscape. And those 2 groups are Longarostrines and Latorostrines. The latter group is a term also used for crocodilus and alligator, etc.
So it refers more to a body plan than it does to an actual species group.
A head plan, yeah, basically, because we're mostly looking at the skulls in there. And the skulls themselves are available as supplemental material. I'll have a link to that as well in the show notes. So the takeaway that I'm getting from this paper, hopefully somebody can correct me out there if they would like to, and I would love to be corrected, or at least steered a little more accurately in the correct direction, is they claim that the results cast doubt on the existence of a single plesiomorph or optimal morphology. And that's basically in the discussion.
So the paper is...
Okay, let's move on. Go ahead.
So it sounds, just from the quick read I did of this, and the math makes me cross-eyed, and the tables and the figures make me cross-eyed, but it sounds like what they're saying is that that plesiosaurs have evolved large-headed, in short-necked plesiosaurs. Short-necked plesiosaurs of different varieties existed without being phylogenetically related.
Yes.
So they've independently re-evolved into two separate ecomorphologies
Yeah.
multiple times,
Yeah.
which is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's a very statistical approach to looking at all the data, of course. And I gotta say, this is just definitely above my head when it comes to this sort of thing. I have no shame in admitting this. Got some good stuff in here, actually, that are kind of sort of off the side. I mean, they talk about how longistrine taxa have a reduced range of prey types, but that there's some discussion in the literature about the long-snouted river dolphins and how they're able to crush small turtles using their distal teeth, their most distal teeth.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that's just right in here. I mean, this is kind of fascinating stuff. I'd like to look that up myself and explore that because I never heard of such a thing. So, the more slender snout means that a smaller volume of water needs to be displaced during jaw closure. I'm just quoting from the paper itself here. So, enabling the capture small and quick prey might otherwise be expelled by water flow. Yeah, I mean, this it's a fascinating paper. I just would like some more time maybe with this and sort of skip all the stuff that's going to make me scratch my head because like statistics and stuff like that. That does make me cry a lot.
Same here.
Yeah, beats me up and takes my lunch money. But that's the takeaway I got from the paper is that basically their conclusion is based around what they call the protocol here for looking at all these different taxa and come to the conclusion. So, Raven, would you like to go next with yours?
Yes, I did. Spectrovenator. I don't remember if this was announced during SVP. I kind of haven't been keeping up with SVP a lot this year for whatever reason. I probably should. This one leaped out at me just because of the reconstruction of the skull, and the paper is called "An Early Cretaceous Theropod Dinosaur from Brazil Sheds Light on the Cranial Evolution of the Abelisauridae." So that is the dinosaur group that includes Carnotaurus, which is one of my favorite dinosaurs and which is Zach's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive me if I butcher this name, but Hussam Zaher et al. That includes Diego Pol, Bruno Navarro, Rafael Delcourt, Alberto Carvalho wrote this paper together. Basically, what happened is back in 2011, Dr. Zaher found a block containing something called Tapuiosaurus, which is a sauropod known from the São Francisco Basin in eastern Brazil, and was basically kind of just sticking out of the rock there. It was the holotype specimen, in fact, and when they started preparing part of it in the field, which means they take away some of the rock material and expose just the skeleton material underneath, they found that it was lying on top of another dinosaur. And after many years, they were finally able to prepare this fossil, and then they prepared the other one and found it to be this hitherto unknown species of Abelisauride, so distant relative of Carnotaurus and Rugops. This little guy, it's hard to tell how long it is from the paper itself because they kind of focus a lot on the cranial material and less on the postcranial material. So what we know from this dinosaur, we know from the skull, the cranial material, and then we know a good part of the neck, about halfway down, and then we are missing the center part of the trunk, so the shoulder girdle, the arms, the most of the ribs, and then the bottom part of the neck are all missing, as well as the gastralia, which is the rib cage underneath that supports the organs. We know it from the legs. It's got a full, what they call a sacrum, which is like the fused bits there in the pelvis. And we know it from the pelvis and from the legs, and I think we know the feet too.
Yes.
Part of the tail is missing, so both the tip and like the big part of the middle is missing, but it's pretty well preserved and it's pretty complete for being a theropod. Theropods are usually pretty spotty or ground up, and there is some distortion going on in this. We have both sides of the jaw, the lower jaw. Part of the upper jaw is missing on one side, but the rest of it is just kind of in great shape.
Yeah, man, these are beautiful looking fossils, let me tell you.
Right? I love a find like this, and great job, you guys. That was an amazing find and amazing score for what it's worth from us. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful specimen. Well prepared. So it basically occupies a span in time that we really don't know anything about the evolution of the abelosaurids. So it's really exciting in that aspect too, that we can kind of see what an ancestral condition was for these guys. And they had such a strong chin on these animals. That's kind of what drew me to it.
Yeah.
It's just a charming face. Kind of looking forward to actually giving this guy a sketch because he's cute. He's a little guy. He's tiny. He's I think he's only about 6 foot long. I could be mistaken, but it's kind of hard to tell. They don't really give a scale bar with the reconstruction of the animal. They give various scale bars that are various scales for the different sizes, but it looks to me like he's about, I don't know, 6, maybe 10 foot. So like 3 meters, maybe 3.5.
It's always kind of funny when listening to people talk about dinosaurs and how something that is like 6 feet to 3 meters long is considered like a little animal, comparing with like when you talk
Right.
about, you know, actual like animals alive today. When you talk about like, oh, something that's like 6 feet long or 3 meters long, it's like that's a pretty big animal.
Yeah, like a croc or something. Yeah.
I think we just tend to kind of focus on the body and we tend to kind of like ignore the tail as like, that is what makes this animal so big is like it's got a huge tail. But
Yeah.
we tend to, focus on the face and the eyes. If it were to like stand up on its hind legs and like stretched up, it would be able to look you in the eye.
Oh, yeah.
So
Eat your
at
head.
least probably eat your head. It may even be able to just look you in the eye normally. But
Oh, yeah.
compared to the forms that grew into like Rugops and Carnotaurus, that's he's a little guy, and
Very true.
occupies a very special spot here on the tree in that he is one of the most basal, that is the most ancestral form known of these animals, apart from Eoabellosaurus.
Well, actually, on that point, on Eoabellosaurus, I just learned from Andrea Cow's blog, the Theropoda blog, that Eoabellosaurus might not be an abellosaurid. I didn't know that,
Fascinating.
but if that's true, then Spectrovenator would be the earliest or the most basal known. Is it plesiomorphic now? I don't know what people are using now.
Yeah, plesiomorphic is what they call it now.
Yeah. Used to be primitive back in my day.
Back in our
We say it was
day,
the most primitive
yes.
abellosaurid, but no.
I got to say they are still using the word primitive on occasion.
Mm.
At least they were in
Oh,
some of
okay.
the other stuff I've been reading. So it just
Yeah.
depends on who.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, Andrea Cow definitely knows their stuff, so I trust their judgment.
Yes, me too.
Yes, so I think it's a cute little guy. It's a very charming profile there. I look forward to both drawing it, and I might actually draw one more before I actually jump in on Spectrovenator, and that is Scorpiovenator, which is one of its relatives,
Oh, yeah.
later relatives, because it's got a really cool looking face. It's like a bulldog.
Yep.
I can imagine it being like a kind of dog-like face, but that would be mammal centric of me.
Yeah, that's known for basically a complete skull too.
Right?
Yeah.
You should just draw it with a dog nose just to piss people off. And
There you
like
go.
big old jowls and floppy ears. Like, it is a pit bull.
There you go. I like it.
That's my take. I like it. It's very, very good find. Kind of a 2-for-1 special there, finding it underneath another one. Of course, that gets my speculative brain going, and I want to say, oh, maybe it was hunting it, but I'm pretty sure that's not what was going on.
Maybe a Tapuisaurus fell on it.
That's what I was
died
thinking.
on
Like,
top of it.
died on top of it,
Whoosh.
and that's why we can't find the rib cage and that part, because it was basically powdered. But that's not probably what
Crushed to
happened at all.
smithereens.
That's crushed to smithereens. Don't take our word for it. That's probably not what happened, but it sounds good to us. So,
And Tapuisaurus is one of the only titanosaurs with one of the few sauropods actually with a exquisitely preserved skull.
Yeah. Now, was that the holotype or was that another specimen that they found with the...
Oh, you know what? I'm not positive. I think it was a part of the holotype,
Yep.
and it got a separate description.
Yeah, it says type specimen. So yeah, that is for a sauropod and how fragile their bones were in their head, that is a great preservation on that. You're right.
Yeah, it's a good looking animal.
Oh, so Zach, you're up.
Okay, I am going to briefly talk about paper in Royal Society Open Science by Greg Funston and co-authors et al. It's called A New Two-Fingered Dinosaur Sheds Light on the Radiation of Oviraptorsaurian. This is a great paper. I've been waiting for this paper to be published for 3 years. When I went to SVP in Alberta in 2017, this was my favorite presentation. It's this trio of exquisitely preserved oviraptorids all laying together. They all died together, kind of huddled together in bird-like postures, and I was just so fascinated by them. And they have been now described, and 4 additional specimens have been found.
Whoa.
Either in the field or there was one in a museum put up in 1974. They didn't have a name for it, but it's called Oksoko avarsan. It's just a beautiful specimen if you guys look this thing up. And because there are 7 individuals known, every bone in the body has been found. The preservation is so good that it's just incredible. One of the best known oviraptorosaurs now, thanks to the preservation and the number of individuals. There's even an ontogenetic series, which is rare in dinosaurs to begin with. It documents a trend that's exclusive to Gobi Desert oviraptorids, of which there are several, where the arms get smaller or shorter and the number of fingers is reduced. And eventually they become a little bit like tyrannosaurs, where the first finger is the largest, the thumb, the second finger is as long, and the third finger more or less disappears. That does not have as big a range of motion as some of its more familiar colleagues like Con or Psittipati or Oviraptor, although Oviraptor is not particularly well known despite it appearing in every kid's book in the world.
So was this discovered in Mongolia?
It was rescued from smugglers in Mongolia.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Oh,
then I guess they
wow.
were trying to get it out of Mongolia, and this team got a hold of it, and just such a cool fossil that I'm so excited to see published. And so not only has an ontogenetic series, it's got this weird 2-fingered hand, but it also shows that these juveniles cluster together. The bones are in such good positioning. They don't appear to have washed down a stream together. The bones would be all disarticulated and randomized, but these guys clearly died together. It's not sure how. Perhaps they were buried in a sandstorm. That's the usual Gobi Desert, because even as the Gobi Desert today is a desert, it was also a desert in the late Cretaceous. So they may have all been buried by a sandstorm or died of exposure or any number of things. But yeah, I'm just over the moon that this thing is published. And if you read the paper, I also recommend going and downloading the supplementary information. There are more incredible photographs of these bones that they found. Just, so exciting. Congratulations to that team. And man, oh man. And I think this is just the first of many papers that are coming about Oksoko.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at the just the photo there in Wikipedia of the type specimens. That is great preservation, and I'm glad that they were able to rescue it from smugglers so science could take a look at that. Beautiful assemblage there.
At least they're not being sold at auction for, what was it, like $13.8 million? Or was it?
No, I thought it was like 30.
Oh, it was $38 million? Yeah, some stupid number like that. Good Lord. That's a whole topic for another day.
Yep. I'm glad they were able to rescue it from that fate, and now we have some information on an entirely new species previously unknown. And with such weird characteristics, too. I mean, I've never heard of... I had no idea that was something occurring in Oviraptor evolution.
Yeah, they didn't either until they ran their phylogenetic analysis and saw that, hey, this is kind of strange. These Gobi forms are all getting shorter hands as they go towards Oksoko.
It's got kind of a big head proportionally compared to some other oviraptorids I've looked at too, because I did a lot of looking at Conchoraptor for a painting I did way back when called Namek Sunrise, and that definitely had a proportionally smaller head.
It does have a big head.
They're doing the whole Tyrannosaurus thing with like bigger heads and smaller hands.
It totally looks that way, yeah, and I think that's what the authors were discussing in the paper there and Zach was talking about.
Fat little guy too, with his pubis goes down so low. Looks very bird-like. The thing I'm fascinating about Oviraptorsaurs generally is that they're some of the most bird-like theropods, but they are not particularly close to birds.
Interesting.
Well, that's like Alvarezzosaurids. I like that as well.
Oh,
because
geez,
I
right?
think
Yeah.
because one of the first that was ever described, it was originally described as a flightless bird.
Those Mononicus, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And the first basal-most known Oviraptorosaurs, the Caudipterygians, were also initially described as flightless birds back in 1998.
Birds were inevitable.
Birds were inevitable. Yep, everything.
One way or
It's
another.
birds all the way
And
around.
funnily enough, the bandits are still kind of yelling about birds are dinosaurs.
Yep.
Right.
I don't think anybody is really listening to them at this point. I mean, it seems kind of
No.
absurd too.
Yeah.
I think they're just mostly talking to like themselves
And each other.
Yeah.
They yell
It's a
very
smaller
loudly,
and smaller group.
True.
We would have either had feathered birds from one lineage or another, or I don't know, maybe the little flappy flat bat-winged ones.
Scansoriopterygians.
Yes, those ones, those guys there. Yes.
Well, also don't forget there was like an entire group of birds that died out at the end of the Cretaceous period. The so-called the opposite birds.
And anti-ornithines, yeah.
We call them opposite bird, but they were like the OG birds, so to speak.
Yes.
And the birds that we have now were like the kind of newcomers that survived the KPG extinction event.
Absolutely true. Yep.
Johnny come latelys.
Well, Tommy, do you have the best story for us?
Yes, we have saved the best for last here.
Yes.
The best.
Here's the thing. I realized in between now and the last time I recorded that because of my profession, I come across interesting papers on a daily basis. So I had a whole, if you looked at our Discord, there's like a whole list of stuff. They go, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. But then I came across this 30-year-old paper that managed to kind of overshadow all of that and go, hold everything. I need to talk about this paper published in 1990 in a French journal. Well, the title of the journal is French. I think it's Analyse des Parasitologie Humaine et Comparée. I've completely mangled that title. It's called Parasite now. So the new title of the journal is called Parasite. It was published in 1990. It's in volume 65, number 56, on page 255. And it's a description of a species of nematode called Crassicauda carbonelli. And the thing that makes this little worm, or not quite little worm, stand out is that it lives in a whale's penis.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Penis worms.
Yep.
Penis worms.
Well, thick worm time, everybody. So,
Yes, folk whale dick worms.
So this particular worm was retrieved from a male longfin pilot whale that was stranded on the coast of the Spanish Mediterranean in March 1987. So quite a while ago. Apparently from 1981, and I hope this is still going on, any whales or cetacean that was stranded there were routinely examined for parasites, and it's during one of these examinations that they come across this worm. Now, to give it a bit of a context, this particular genus of worm, Crassicauda, is kind of a known thing way before the description of this particular species. Mostly, they were only able to collect fragments of these worms because they tend to be really long and they're deeply embedded inside the host tissue, but they're also really skinny as well. So it's really difficult to pull out these like long strand-like things without breaking them apart. And there's about 14 species that have been described, and they infect a variety of different cetaceans, ranging from dolphins to baleen whales, and they've been described from a wide range of cetacean organs as well, usually somewhere in the urogenital system, so the plumbing area, so to speak. There's been a few species that have been described from subcutaneous tissue or in the muscles, in the mammary gland. There's one species that is actually really weird in that it lives inside the pygmy sperm whale, and the head of it is embedded in the dorsal muscle. It's so long that the tail of it comes out on this special gland that is found on the neck of these pygmy sperm whales. So for people who don't know, pygmy sperm whale has this little special gland that's almost like a kind of like an ink gland on a squid. And when it's being chased by a predator, it would squirt out this stuff. It's kind of like squid ink. And so the tail of the worm is embedded in there. And the whole worm is like 3 meters long. So it's wound around the body of the whale. So that's a different species. So there's 14 different species of these guys. Some of them can grow really big. In terms of like most nematodes, most roundworms, you talk about things that are measured in like the millimeters, if even that, millimeters, centimeters at most. These guys can grow up to like over a meter.
Wow.
There's one species that live in fin whales that grow to 11 meters long in the urogenital system of fin whales.
Oh my God.
So Crassicauda carbonelli. Oh yeah, they're big worms and they live in like big hosts. By the way, tiny parasites also live in big host animals as well. Many people have the misconception that, oh, big host must mean big parasite. Yes, but not necessarily always the case. So anyway, this particular worm, the whale dickworm, it was found embedded in it's got the head end of it at least. It was embedded in the corpus cavernosum. So for those of you who know a little bit about anatomy, corpus cavernosum are those rods of tissue that runs down the shaft of the penis. So basically the stuff that is responsible for giving you a boner, if you happen to be a penis haver. So the worms were embedded, it's got its head end embedded in there, and the tail end of the worm was in the urethra. So whenever the whale pees, the eggs, the tail end is where the eggs come out. So the eggs will get washed out with the pee stream.
Oh,
Efficient.
Yeah, that's how it works. So the thing about nematodes is that even though I guess the whale, like I said with this particular genus of worms, because they're very long and very skinny, it's very common to only be able to retrieve fragments of it and not the whole worm. But the scientists just need the front end and the back end to have the diagnostic characteristics to be able to describe the species. So they were able to describe it based on 40 specimens that came in like fragments of front end and back end.
Oh, interesting.
And they also look at like things like egg dimensions and stuff like that. So so if you want to tell what a nematode is, you get its head and you get its tail, because all the in between is just like, for most species, is just one long tapered cylinder. There isn't really much going on in between on the outside anyway. So in this one whale, this one pilot whale, they managed to find 40 specimens. So there were 40 worms crammed into the dick
Wow.
of this whale.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and they were like, it was all the worms are kind of coiled up in that, that boner tissue, and like coiled up like springs, and they were able to pull out like a few fragments that measured up to 20 to 18 centimeters long from both the head and the tail of these worms. And the worms measured about 1.3 millimeter in diameter. So a very skinny worm, and they don't know how long it gets to. They just know it's all coiled up in there somewhere. It's all embedded in the whale penis tissue, so it's kind of difficult to get out. But the penis tissue that it's embedded in, it's completely wrecked. It's like broken capillaries and necrosis and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if this whale could have had an erection because it was just completely wrecked. I can tell all the penis havers listening to this podcast are just kind of wincing away and me describing like 40 worms living inside the penis of this whale. So This is not the only species to have been found in the nether regions of whales. There's been like other species that have been described from the urogenital region of whales. There's a Crassicauda, which is type genus for the entire genus, and Crassicauda boppus, which has been described from the penis and clitoris of baleen whales. Crassicauda fulaborni has been described from the vagina muscles of Venus porpoise. And so most of them are associated with urogenital region. The life cycle of these parasites are unknown. And in fact, for many marine parasites, the life cycle mostly based upon educated guesses because the ocean is humongous and it's difficult to sample for parasites, especially parasites that often only exist at very low prevalence, but enough for the life cycle to continue. But based on other species that are related to this genus, most likely there'll be kind of an intermediate crustacean host. So the eggs goes out in the pea stream, it hatch into larvae that probably infect little crustacean. Maybe then the crustaceans get eaten by fish and then the fish get eaten by whale, all that kind of stuff. But it's mostly guesswork at this point. So probably you don't get like direct transmission, because I know someone on the internet, when I tweeted about this paper, did ask, was it like sexually transmitted? Don't know, but probably not, because many of these guys have complex life cycle that need to infect other things before they infect the vertebrate host. However, whale-to-calf transmission has been proposed for Crassicauda grampicola, because Crassicauda grampicola infects the mammary glands of whales. So it's been proposed that when calf feed on the milk from the female whales, that they would get infected. This is kind of reminiscent of some sea lion and seal hookworms have a similar kind of transmission cycle, which I wrote about at one point on the Parasite of the Day blog.
Similar thing in seals is interesting.
Yeah, but that was like for an entirely different parasite. Well,
Huh.
entirely different nematode. Yeah, so this is probably convergent evolution. I say, well, not just probably, this is like, I guess if that particular Crassicauda species does do the whole lacto transmission pathway, then it would be a convergent evolution of that transmission pathway from kind of the seal hookworm, which has evolved that transmission pathway due to its own reasons. So hookworms usually infect terrestrial mammals, and terrestrial mammals, relatively straightforward. You just like have them pooping, the eggs in the poop, the eggs gets everywhere. They have larval stage that are on the ground, and then if you step on them, then the larvae would burrow through your feet and then into your gut eventually to feed on your blood. That's how hookworm works. But that doesn't work if you are infecting a marine mammal. So they have a whole different life cycle to take advantage of the breeding season. So they synchronize the breeding season along with that of the host to take advantage of it. And the hookworms, usually they aren't very lethal, but the hookworms for sea lions are very lethal to the sea lion pups because of what they need to do in order to complete the life cycle. I won't go into too much detail about it here, but I'll put in the show notes the blog post I wrote up about seal hookworms. Yeah, there's a more recent paper about Crassicauda that had some adult and larval specimen as well as DNA of this particular parasite that was published in a journal called International Journal for Parasitology, Parasites and Wildlife. It was in the August 2019 issue. So they were able to do some stuff to work out the life cycle of these guys, but much like the majority of parasites that are out there, the life cycle for them are based on guesswork and on the species for which the life cycle are known, because that's probably one of the most difficult things to do, to elucidate the full life cycle of many of these parasites, because first of all have to like kind of guess what animal it is the intermediate host. And then even if you know definitely what the animal serves as the intermediate host, you don't know whether it infects like 50% of the population or 0.5% of the population. So you have to go and find the one that is infected, and then you have to like match them up. Having DNA molecular technology now makes it easier to match up larval stage with the adult stage, but you still got to find the parasite in the first place. And if it's got very low infection prevalence, you might find yourself like dissecting a whole bunch of stuff to not find anything. So yeah, doing life cycle work is like, I think at one point I tweeted half jokingly on Twitter, it was something like parasitologists who elucidate full life cycle for parasites are braver than the troops or something like that. So yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
Oh, excellent.
Scary. That's a scary group of parasites that I would not want to be
Oh, you have
infected by.
no
ever.
idea.
Yes, nobody would. I
Are there
think.
human parasites of this nature?
Well, I guess the closest thing to it would be the parasite that causes, but they don't go directly into the dick, so to speak, but parasite that causes swellings in extremities. So I'm thinking of like the
Uh,
nematode that causes elephantiasis and stuff like that. So they
oh
live in the
yeah.
lymph node and they block up the lymph node and they can cause like your legs or your scrotum to like swell up. But that's usually if you have like heavy infections of those things. But not as far as I know, there aren't any human parasite that burrows into the penis. Not that I know
Cool.
of
Cool.
anyway. Someone might want to come and tell me about it on Twitter. And by the way, not the so-called Candiru catfish, that catfish in Amazon, despite the many stories that go around about it swimming up people's urethra, there isn't really any documented case of that actually happening. There was a paper
Oh,
that
really?
reviewed all the supposed evidence of like the famous vampire catfish that swims up people's dick hole. Apparently not. And I wrote a review paper about parasitic habits in fish, in bony fishes. And yeah, that doesn't seem to be the case. They do feed on blood. They swim in the gills of like catfish and other fish and suck on the blood from the gill tissue. But there's
Oh
no
wow.
evidence that they actively seek out your dick hole to swim up it and suck on your blood. So not interested in dick hole.
This is good information to have.
I suspect this is probably a story that maybe the locals tell any visitors so they don't go around pissing into their rivers. So it's like,
Oh
better
yeah. I mean,
don't piss in the river because otherwise you'll get this little catfish that swims up your dick hole. So I suspect that's probably where it originated. And it just turned into a thing where people uncritically go, oh yeah, this thing swims up the dick hole because it's a great story, even if it's not based on facts. And
right.
2020 seems to be the year for that kind of thing.
Right. So, is there anything else we want to close out with?
I do have one closing thing, and that is be sure to check me on Facebook at Raven Amos Pin Art. I have started a new page for just the enamel pins that I've been designing. My first design, Sailor Sue, which is kind of a mashup between a well-known magical girl anime and Sue the T-Rex.
It is good. It is very, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead and
agreed.
check that out on my Etsy shop and on Facebook under Raven Amos Pin Art. And that's all I want to close out with. That, and I did drop a video for the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology meeting, Paleo Art Sessions,
yeah.
put on by Brian Eng. I actually kind of worked on that mostly this week and got that out kind of at the last minute. Thank you for putting that on, Brian Eng. It gives us an opportunity for us paleo artists to reach out and network with each other, even though we are over great distances because of a pandemic. So thank you for putting that on and doing that, Brian Eng. So check him out. He's Don't Mess with Dinosaurs.
Zach? Zach, do you
Hi.
have anything to close with?
Tune in next time when Zach says, ooh. What?
Okay.
all I
Well,
got.
I guess all I have to say is tune in next time for more cartoon commentary from Tommy and possibly some more gruesome parasites.
Oh, yes. Give the people what they want.
Yes, absolutely. Whether or not they're ready for it.
All dickworms all the time.